So now we're moving up more and more. ST, aka SGS Thompson, they're a French company. They came out with some pretty cool chips, and I actually really like these guys. So they've been making 6805 since early 90s, 91. They started with no mesh, and then they went to a chip with a mesh. And the very first mesh was just simply a plane, and on the plane you had little holes in it. And I didn't take the time to show you that just because it doesn't really, it's too easy. It doesn't really show much. There was a metal plate over the whole chip basically with holes in it. And so in the wired video, did anybody see my wired video where I like take the nail polish and make the mask? Good. So if you look at the wired video, you can see clearly that type of a mesh. And I will show you some pictures of it after when we're all through with the slides. And so this chip really, what made it secure, I guess I didn't link to it. What made this chip secure was that you had a mesh that had an active sense line, like a snake, and then it had ground, which are true grounds coming from this side and this side, but they didn't meet. So at this end of the chip, the grounds are all connected on the corner, on this corner, so to speak, and then they're going diagonally across the chip, and then from the opposite edge, the same thing. And in between this, you have this one wire that is tied to VDD, the VCC line, 5 volts, 3 volts, whatever the chip's input is, and it's weaving through it. If this line is broken, it would freeze the core. That was the only punishment on an ST16, was that the CPU stopped running. So it was kind of interesting because you knew exactly if you fixed the mesh or not, and when you were all finished, you could simply just, the chip's running again once you patched it. And that's exactly, actually that's not exactly what I did in the wired video. In the wired video, the mesh, because it was just a solid plane of ground with holes in it, I made a big hole in it and I was just able to probe the bus. I didn't even need to fix the mesh. Today, as we start to shrink, we go lower. That last one was 1.2 micron, jumping around a little on the size back there, just to give you some ideas of what I've seen. Today, these chips everything I see today is below 350. It's typically about 220 if I had to average it. Some are 90, some are 180, some are 140. It just depends who makes it. But the principles that I'm describing about the instruction register and stuff still applies today. Even the nail polish attack. I'm going to show you some chips that from Thompson that are 180 nanometers that I executed the nail polish attack on. And I stopped early because I ran into a problem with the nail polish coating because of the heat. The heat cracked it and it came off. And so before I go too far off topic though, so some of these smart cards and such come out with filler metal. You can see it here. This is TSMC. I believe it's like a 250 nanometer process. I've never really measured it, but it's smaller than 350. And so, actually it may be 350, I'm sorry. It may actually be. So this chip, this is not security. You don't lay filler metal here that does nothing and call it, it's obscurity, I guess. It's obscuring below, but it's by no means a security, enhancement to this design. And if anything, it helps me because when I'm in the fib, I can count. So I can count from the edge and say, okay, I got to go over 18 of these little stubs and then drill. And it gets even better because look here, they have these little I don't even know if these are alive, but there's it came up to the metal 3 surface and then it went for a few micrometers and then went down again to metal 2. And I don't know what these little stubs are doing, but if they're, I'm assuming they're live. And so I can measure off these stubs and say, okay, from the stub, count up 5, go over 20. Anyway, so this is, if you use TSMC in your chip, and you tell, they give you this black box of a memory. This is one of their popular memory sizes that I see. I see Freescale using it. This is some Chinese smart card that use this one. And you can see fillers everywhere, but there's no mesh. This is the top metal right here. One of these lines might even be important. So I may not even need to fib it, because if this is 350, I believe it is actually 350, and even if it's 250, I can still hit this track right here. It's by itself. And I can still hit this one right here, and I can probably get to these two because I'm pretty good with the laser. But if I'm skeptical, I'll just go use the fib and open them. These you don't even need to count. You can go right to them. Take an optical picture, go load it in your fib, make sure you're grounded well to your stage, and then in 5 minutes later, you're looking for this wire once you've leveled yourself. So those not so invisible ROMs. here's the case, 180 nanometer Samsung smart card. So Samsung has these smart cards that they produce. I don't believe they're common criteria certified or anything, but what's interesting about these smart cards is that they give you a bootloader. You sign an NDA to get the documents, and then they tell you, okay, when you buy the cards from us for whatever, $5 each or some price, there's a bootloader in a ROM, and the ROM also has, you can permanently disable the bootloader, and the bootloader also has ROM functionality for like triple DES or RSA, some type of PKI, etc. The bad part is the ROM is visible. Now this, I didn't actually stain this. Oliver Kummerling, this was donated from Oliver Kummerling, so I want to give him some credit for this picture. So in this picture, he stained this ROM and all the P-type dopings came out. Now what's important about this is they didn't even encrypt the ROM. This is supposed to be a smart card, a brand new smart card fielded today, and yet its ROM is in the clear. So I don't understand that. Now I linked you to the wrong picture here. I'll show you another picture of this ROM later, and you can see clearly where the ROM bits went to FFs. Now this is an ARM 9 or an ARM 10 processor, and so when the ROM became empty at the end of the ROM, they were just all ones. And I believe on this ROM, a white spot is a 1. So. And in the SEM, this is a SEM image. You can clearly, it's dark everywhere that it's not light. So you can see, I mean, it's very easy to detect the bits on this ROM. Then we got baseband processors from cell phones. Anybody do like mess with cell phone hacking? So all you guys want to always hack the iPhone, and you always want to hack, the BlackBerry and all these other phones. And the initial way to get to this would be to look at the bootloader ROM first, because a lot of these guys, they might run encrypted code today, but a lot of them just had a signature. So it's signed with RSA 128 and MD5 hash. Well, that's great, but what do you do after the signature is checked? Do you ever check it again? So I mean, one wire and you can ore yourself into a higher area of the flash, because the flash has sections that are checked. So how do you know this? You don't have the manuals. Well, you can read this ROM just like if it was textbook. But I mean, now I imaged it in the fib. This is done in a fib, so this is a fib image. But this ROM is not encrypted. If I thought it was, this gave it away that it isn't right here. Because if it was encrypted, this wouldn't have been all ones. So every bit here is basically unprogrammed in the ROM. They could have at least, and this is good advice for all of you if you design a software, or if you design hardware, it's good to think like this. This ROM should have had junk put at the end of it. This ROM should never have had static ones. And because it did, it's very obvious that it's not encrypted. Well, you could do it, but because the user software and your bootloader technically would never call it. Do you follow me? Okay, so that's what this gentleman answered the question. That's a good point, because I only see it from one side of the coin. But this gentleman's saying that the trade-off is basically that reliability issues in manufacturing. So thank you for clarifying. Understood. No, that's a very good point. So he's saying basically one error you might end up executing from this area, and it's junk. At least this case, it's like a NOP or something in the ARM language. So, but you can read this ROM out like it wasn't even, like it was nothing to do. The problem with this chip is it's so small. I think it was like 130 nanometers. Maybe it'd been larger than this. No, it was 130 nanometers. The problem with this optically, 1500 mag, 1000 magnification, you can't see it clear enough to really make out the ones and zeros. You can, but it's grainy. It's so. I just imaged it in the fib. This is 5000 magnification. So zoom it in 5,000 times, and this is what those bits look like. I have no idea the way it's ordered. I just this is just to show you guys. So a lot of companies like Atmel are doing meshes. Anybody here design like this type of security product that has like a meshing over it? The mesh is great. The mesh slows me down for about a day. So and I mean this sincerely, it really does. When I talked about the TPM attack, I explained it took me 6 months. But what everybody didn't understand was that what took me it took me 2 months to actually finish the TPM chip. It took me 4 months to make buffers to sit on 1.8 volt signal without changing its capacitance so much that it shuts the chip down. At 33 megahertz, it's pretty fast to put down a bunch of needles, and so basically there were challenges on that, and also I had to come up with a way to get around the mesh. But once I came up with this way to get around the mesh, and as well as the other challenge that I just described, now those apply to any chip today. Now this chip's not that small, but what's neat here is that Atmel went out of their way. This is from a chip called the Crypto Companion. Anybody heard of that? Atmel Crypto Companion? Okay, it's snake oil, so stay away from it. So it's this chip. Let us do the cryptography for you. We'll prove to you that they authenticated correctly. Blah 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 blah. I say stay away. That's my humble advice. So anyway, but this mesh is cute. It's very cute. Another company making meshes like this is Renesas. Anybody use Renesas smart cards? If you do, there's a good chance that the mesh looks similar to this. Several circuits, and like you can see here at the top of the screen, this is several different circuits. But what the engineers didn't understand that designed this mesh is that I can cut one of these lines at a time and watch them go out and turn black. And this is called voltage contrast. And so as I cut the line, I can see everywhere the line went. Now I will actually have to polish down the die to where the metal's exposed. Otherwise the fib won't show me anything. But once I've done that, as soon as that line floats from one end, it's going to go darker. It's because it's not properly connected up anymore. And you'll see this in a little bit. Okay. Voltage contrast. It can kill you. You think these guys are thinking, we've got it. No problem. Well, they don't really have anything. Because you can see here, this is from the 66. So here, this line, it's out here, it's out here. Everywhere I marked it in red, the line was out. Now, the 66 mesh, I really like it because it was consistent. So they get an A with me, if I had to rate them. Because even though it's simple for me to break now, it wasn't in the beginning, because this mesh covers the entire substrate except the bond pad area, and they're very tight line spacing, and it's consistent. NXP, Atmel, ST, I can't even count them, and you'll see why soon. But NXP and Atmel's meshes are not as consistent as this is. So, in conclusion, security is always going to be constantly evolving. I took you from the early 80s into today, and nothing's really secure. There's gentlemen here that gentleman that designs chips. He may learn something today, he may not learn something today. I don't know, but for one thing, he'll think twice before he does his next layout. And so this is good, because if you're using a chip from a company, you need to learn, the user needs to trust the vendor, but it's kind of hard to trust the vendor when you're not really sure what's inside. And I've made a lot of people angry in the industry, but I've also made a lot of people happy, because the manufacturers, like Infineon, probably hates me today because of the TPM break. And I didn't mean to do it to them in that way, but it was important to get that out to the public that, it's not as secure as you think it is. Who here uses an Aladdin e-token? Nobody uses an Aladdin e-token Pro? Aladdin e-token Pro runs on something called the CardOS. Anybody here use CardOS? Your application is stored in the EEPROM under the default key. You do? No? So the default key, so basically it's a 66